feel like I've been chasing the perfect ultrawide for years. I want lots of pixels for clear, crisp, sharp text. I want easy connectivity for single cable MacBook life, so I can connect my laptop with just a single cable. I also want a high refresh rate because my phone has 120 Hertz, my tablets, my TV. Why shouldn't my desktop monitor also have a high refresh rate? And I've been buying monitors over the years thinking the next one would finally be it. And I'm pleased to say I think this Dell monitor might actually be it, although we'll get to that throughout the review. On the desk today with me is the Dell UltraSharp 40 curved Thunderbolt hub monitor, the U4025QW. Now, as I say, I've had this monitor for about 18 months now, and it's the first time I've genuinely stopped looking for the next one in years. Now, you should know that I bought this unit and Dell sent the other one, this one here, over for free in exchange for this review. No money changed hands though, and the fact of the matter is, I like this monitor so much on my home setup that I wanted a second one for my work setup, but it was too expensive. This monitor is $2,100 at the time of recording after all. So I reached out to Dell, who sent me this one over here, 17 months ago, and they've only sent me one follow-up email asking where the review was, in fairness. So anyway, I wanted to let you know I paid full price for one. I liked it so much, I requested a review unit as a second. So now you know the facts, let's continue. This is a 39.7-inch display, which Dell markets as being 40 inches. It runs 5K pixels wide by 2K pixels tall at 120 Hertz. It uses an IPS Black panel with a 2000:1 contrast ratio and supports VESA Display HDR 600. You'll find in general use that it hits about 450 nits in typical brightness, peaking at around 600 nits. Now, a common theme for this monitor throughout the entire review is the specs are never going to blow your socks off. Like, no single aspect of this monitor is best in class, but it does everything really adequately well. And I think that's probably a compliment because there's no rough edges on this monitor. Everything about it is just good, it's adequate, it's functional, it works really well. So if you're looking for like the absolute peak brightness, maybe an OLED panel might be a better choice, but I don't think one exists at this size and this resolution and this refresh rate. So as I say, it's a really nice sweet spot. I'm spoiling the conclusion before we even get there, but I do really like this monitor. I should say that this monitor has a full Thunderbolt 4 hub built into it, which means I can connect my laptop using a single cable. This single cable here is capable of 140 watts of power delivery. It also means I can connect into the back of the monitor using its 2.5 gig Ethernet connection. I can also use the built-in KVM functionality of the monitor by connecting up two computers and then switching between them with a single keyboard and mouse on the desk. It also supports picture-by-picture mode and has a serious selection of USB ports as well. And I end up kind of thinking of this thing as not just a monitor, but also a hub or a dock as well. Now, if you consider that, say, a CalDigit Thunderbolt dock is $300-400, something like that, you look at this $2,100 price tag of this monitor, and it's still steep, don't get me wrong, but you can maybe take buying an external dock off your shopping list and put that towards this monitor instead. And so it becomes, with man maths at least, a $1,700-1800 monitor instead of a $2,100 monitor. As I say, still expensive, but maybe that helps you justify something if you need to sell it to yourself. Now, before I bought this monitor over the years, I purchased, the first one was an LG back in 2017, 18, something like that, when I lived in London. This was the LG 38UC99W. I got kind of tired of juggling multiple displays. Like, I was running a ThinkPad back then, and I just wanted to connect it through a single cable or dock my laptop and have everything show up, and then also use the laptop screen as well. It's difficult. It's difficult. It's a lot of pixels, a lot of resolution, a lot of software glitches. So I switched out to one of these giant ultrawides, the 38-inch ultrawide club. And that LG unit ran at 3840 by 1600 pixels at 60 Hertz. And in the early days, USB-C was not Thunderbolt rated. In fact, Thunderbolt wasn't even a thing, I don't think, back then. So it wasn't capable of high refresh rate, and the text just wasn't crisp because the pixel density just wasn't there. Then in around 2020, LG brought out the successor to this monitor, the 38WN95CW. And that had a Thunderbolt 3 hub built right into it, so I could connect a laptop directly into the monitor that had a high refresh rate, and the single cable could support the refresh rate because Thunderbolt 3 had enough bandwidth to do that at that resolution. Now this was better, but it was still not where I wanted it to be in terms of sharpness and clarity for text. For example, up here I have the Dell 27-inch UltraSharp monitor, and I'd use that at work, and then I'd come home to the 38-inch Ultrawide and be like, oh, it doesn't look very good. So when you get used to a certain way of text looking crisp and sharp, like on a laptop screen or on a proper 4K monitor, and then you go back to those older, less pixel dense monitors, it's just, I don't know. I suppose I'm a display snob, but what can I say? And so essentially what I ended up trying to chase was like a MacBook screen level quality density, or a 27-inch 4K pixel density in this ultra-wide format. And that's broadly speaking what this monitor gives you. Now I find that 40 or 38 to 40 inches is right around the edge of being perfectly usable without being absurd. Indeed, we've all seen the videos of people with giant TVs on their desk looking up at the corners every time you move a window from here to here. Any bigger than this, and this really is right on the limit for me. In fact, I think I saw a video from Linus where he had a 6K version of this monitor. It's too big. I think it's too, I haven't used it, but I think it's too big. Like, you can see him in the video, even just moving his head like that. It's like if you have a window up in the corner of the screen and you're looking up there for more than, like slacks up there, for example, for even more than 30 seconds, you'll feel it in your neck. Whereas this one, it's right on the limit. I never really notice any eye strain or neck strain or anything. Like I say about this monitor, it just does everything. It's like plumbing. Like if it does its job really well, you don't notice it. And the same, I can say the same thing about this monitor. Like after a while, it just kind of fades into the background and I stop noticing it. Same is true of the curve of this monitor too. It has a 2500R curve. And when I'm editing video, which I do a lot of for work, I never notice the curve. And that's probably the biggest compliment I can give this monitor, is it just fades into the background. Everything about it is just good. Now, when using this monitor at the 5K, 2K resolution, it wants to pixel double itself up to being 2560 by 1080p in macOS. I find that a little bit too big in my face, so I always take it down one notch in terms of fractional scaling on macOS. It's not a problem. I don't notice any loss in sharpness or anything like that. And indeed, I'd completely forgotten I did that until I was writing this review. I find performance on an Apple, one of the modern Apple Silicon Macs to be absolutely a non-issue. And when I'm using something for 40 hours a week, I just need it to be dense, but not too dense, so that, my eyes feel pretty good. I don't have anything else to say on this topic. I take it down one notch and it's perfect. Let's talk a little bit about the stand, because I still find it weird that Apple normalized the idea of paying $1,000 for a height adjustable stand, which this monitor has. I'm going to adjust. It goes all the way up like this, all the way down like that. So there's quite a lot of vertical height adjustment. There's a little bit of side to side tilt and pivot adjustment, as well as being able to angle it forward and backwards like that. 150 mil of height adjustment up and down, tilt from -5 to +21, and then swivel from -30 to +30. It won't go vertical because imagine the height you would need on the stand here to get it to rotate vertically. I end up mounting all of my monitors with a VESA mount anyway, so your mileage may vary. But I don't think anybody's buying this monitor to put it vertically. Maybe you're buying 3 of them to create like the giant wall of screen, but I don't think so. I find that, let me just show you the wobble of this thing. It's pretty good, right? I'm going to wobble the desk again. It's okay. It's not perfect, but for this size of screen, it's pretty good. It's pretty solid. Again, following the theme of this entire monitor. It's not absolutely best in class at anything, but there's no excessive things there's no rough edges that kind of annoy me, and the stand feels appropriately engineered for the price point. It's made of metal on the bottom, so it's nice and heavy. It's got a little cable pass-through point just here, so you can kind of use it as a built-in like cable management system, kinda. Although I do kind of wish this grommet was a little higher, but given the placement of the ports on the back of the monitor, I kind of understand why it is where it is. It also supports 100 by 100 VESA mounting, and the panel itself weighs about 18 pounds, so you can put it on pretty much any monitor arm on the market today without too much of an issue. Now, something that often gets overlooked with monitors, this has an integrated power supply. There's no external power brick, just a standard IEC cable straight into the back of the monitor. It also supports switching between different voltages. So if I ever do end up moving back to England, I can take this monitor with me and go from the 110 volts in the States here back to the European 220. That's a very niche use case, I appreciate, but external power bricks I find really, they just clutter up cable trays and they're just a pain to deal with. So having it built right into the monitor makes it feel like a really premium option. It feels clean, intentional, and just a really nice touch. In the world of ultrawides, you'll often hear people describe this experience as like having two 27-inch monitors bolted together without a bezel. But in theory, that is pretty much what it is. But in practice, without any kind of window management software, it can end up being pretty you just spend your whole life resizing windows. Now on macOS, I use an app called Bento Box written by a friend of mine, and it lets me snap windows into different zones. I can move layouts with keyboard shortcuts and reconfigure my workspace instantly. I end up splitting the monitor into roughly 20% on either side, and then the remainder goes in the middle. I find that works pretty well. On Windows, of course, you've got fancy zones, which this supports just fine, and then Linux, you all know, you can do whatever you want on Linux. We've talked a little bit about the IPS panel here already, and as I say throughout the review, the theme of this review is cromulence. This monitor is just perfectly, adequately cromulent in every single facet that it has. I learned the other day, by the way, that the word cromulent was literally invented by The Simpsons. It completely blew my mind, but there you go. So I find that this IPS panel, the blacks are deeper than a traditional IPS panel, so it is a good IPS panel, but it's never going to match an OLED. This is a productivity monitor, whatever that means. So you find yourself staring at static UI elements for 40 plus hours a week. You know, you've got the menu bar at the top, you might have the Slack in the same place every day, and I don't really want to worry about burn-in anxiety. So with an IPS panel, you don't have to worry about that. And because it's 140 pixels per inch, text clarity is excellent. Color coverage is strong as well, with 99% coverage of the DCI P3 color gamut, and it comes factory calibrated as well. Now, I'm not saying I'm a color expert by any means, but I do grade the footage I put out for all the YouTube videos that I make, and I've never found that the footage I look at on this monitor looks unimpressive, or so I have an OLED TV downstairs and then a cheap LCD Roku TV elsewhere, and I find the colors match really well between all those different screens. So just again, a perfectly cromulent monitor throughout. So let's talk a little bit about the bandwidth requirements of running a 5K 2K display at 120 Hz. That requires roughly 35 to 38 gigabits per second of bandwidth over this single cable. Now, DisplayPort 1.4 actually tops out at only around 26 gigabits of effective payload. So yes, this monitor has to use display stream compression at full resolution and refresh rate. That applies over DisplayPort, Thunderbolt 4, and HDMI 2.1. You might be thinking, doesn't Thunderbolt 4 provide 40 gigabits of total bandwidth? And you would be right. But the way in which DisplayPort implementation over Thunderbolt works is that the DisplayPort gets tunneled through the Thunderbolt connection at the 1.4 spec. So we're still limited to that 26 gig of DisplayPort 1.4 connections, even though the Thunderbolt 4 spec can provide 40 gig in total. Therefore, we must use something called display stream compression, or DSC. And this is a 3-to-1 visually lossless compression codec. It's encoded in hardware by both the computer and then decoded by the display. In real world use, I've never really noticed any artifacting or anything like that, even when confetti videos are on the screen and stuff like that. Like, that really screws with YouTube's compression. But with display stream compression, I've never really noticed anything at all. Now let's talk about the connectivity and the ports on this monitor, because there's a lot to go through. You've got one Thunderbolt 4 upstream port delivering 140 watts of power delivery. You've then got a pass-through Thunderbolt 4 downstream port, which can be really useful for things like 10 gig SFP plus network adapters, or even a second monitor if you want that, or some kind of Thunderbolt storage, and you can still live the single cable life. There's HDMI 2.1, DisplayPort 1.4, 2.5 gig Ethernet. There are 4 USB-A ports running at 10 gigs per second, and a USB-C upstream port as well. You've also got these cool little guys somewhere in the front with this little USB hub down here for a couple of quick access. What have we got? 2 USB-C and 1 USB-A port down here. You've got an audio out port as well as really pretty good built-in speakers. You can get away without having any other speakers on your desk if you want just to use it for Google Meet calls or Zoom or whatever you're doing. So with all of those cables going into the back of your monitor, you can live the single cable dream, as I keep saying. But that's a lot of cables because you could have 3 different displays, you could have multiple USB hubs back there, a couple of Thunderbolts, an Ethernet, and the power cord. And by that point, you're ending up with sort of 10, 12 or so cables. So it would be nice to see a monitor like this have, and we've seen it sometimes with smart TVs where they have like a control box that would go under the desk and then a single like umbilical cord that connects into the display itself. That would be kind of nice, although I appreciate maybe with Thunderbolt and some of the higher performance peripherals that the ability to connect signal integrity and signal paths and that kind of stuff might be a bit tricky, but that's probably the only downside of this monitor I can think of, to be honest. And it's not even really a problem of this monitor, it's a problem of every monitor ever made, is that you have to connect all the cables to this area under the monitor always looks crap when it's full of lots of cables. I'd love to see a future version of this monitor, or indeed any monitor, where you've got one trunk umbilical cord carrying power, networking, and data to make it that much more clean. I mean, not even Apple do that. So that would be nice if we could see that. Now, when you've got multiple systems connected to this thing, you're probably going to want to use the built-in KVM. It's pretty powerful. It's done in software, so it needs to be running on the computer that's connected, or both of them, I should say. But this monitor does also support DDC control. So if you want to use a Stream Deck to switch the inputs on this monitor, or indeed any other script, for example, I have downstairs a Linux VFIO gaming rig setup with a Windows virtual machine, and I want to switch between those setups, and then my Thunderbolt MacBook as well going into the back. So I want to be able to switch between those 3 inputs as well as any connected peripherals. I can just use the Stream Deck and then change the input using DDC commands sent via the Stream Deck. One important detail with that, though, is that the Stream Deck needs to be connected directly to one machine, not through the monitor's USB hub, and that machine needs to be always on. Unless you want to run the Stream Deck software in 3 places and then have the Stream Deck reinitialize every single time with all the rest of the USB devices when it changes inputs. That gets kind of messy though, so I just connect my Stream Deck directly into the Linux box that's always on, and then it just works. And the monitor becomes a switching fabric for the entire desk, and it stops being just a display. It becomes like part of the infrastructure of the setup. Now, if you're in the Apple Mac world, we've already mentioned the Apple display having a $1,000 stand, kind of a joke at this point. But if you're in the Mac world, the obvious comparisons with this monitor are the Apple Studio display and maybe the Pro Display XDR. Both of those displays, though, they're just fundamentally flawed. They both run at 60 Hz. I don't know why the really expensive one only runs at 60 Hz. Why isn't that ProMotion? They do have higher pixel density, of course, being 27-inch panels, 5K and then 32 at 6K. But they're both 60 Hz, as I say. They're neither of them are ultra-wide, which means you're probably going to want 2 to fill up your desk. And they don't have any other display inputs. So, as long as you're in just the Apple ecosystem, you are fine. But there's no DisplayPort inputs, there's no USB ports. It's a typical Apple experience. You will use our stuff and nothing else. And so for that reason alone, I can't really take the Apple displays seriously, despite them being much better performance in terms of being an actual panel, an actual monitor. As an overall package, this is much better. So what would make me replace this monitor? I don't know, really. I mean, maybe a higher resolution, but 5K, 2K is pretty good. It would have to be probably double that to make me interested to replace it. But then you're putting twice the amount of workload on the GPU that's powering those pixels and the cables that have to do. So it's one of those things, you have to find the sweet spot with resolution on how hard it drives the GPU and how the display tech and all the cables and all that can cope with it. So resolution, I'm probably going to say, wouldn't make me replace it. Connectivity, well, it's already pretty good with Thunderbolt 4, to be honest. I mean, yes, I know Thunderbolt 5 theoretically doubles from 40 to 80 gigabits per second. In fact, the only time I come anywhere near the limits of Thunderbolt 4 is when I put a Thunderbolt SFP Plus 10 gigabit Ethernet adapter into the back of this thing. And then instead of getting the full 10 gigs, I'll get something like 6 or 7 gigabits per second throughput instead. So that does bottleneck it slightly, but I'm not really going to worry too much about that, honestly. I mean, 6 or 7 is still plenty fast enough to edit video over a NAS, which is my use case. Now, would I replace this monitor if they released an OLED version? Maybe. I mean, the thing about OLED is that you've got to worry about burn-in, you've got to worry about lifespan of the panel, all that kind of stuff. And TVs have to work really hard to aggressively, move pixels around and pixel shifting, I think they call that. But because this is an IPS panel, I'm not worried about any of that. So as a monitor, it's really great at what it does. Like, it's not trying to be something it's not, if that makes sense. Now, maybe mini LED, maybe if that comes to a monitor and a screen of this size at a price point similar to this in the sort of, I don't know, 2.5-ish. I mean, I want a cheaper version of this monitor, if I'm honest with you. So really, no, there isn't anything that right now that's available on the market technology-wise that makes me think, oh, if a new monitor came along with this higher resolution, or maybe 10 gig Ethernet, maybe, but probably not, because you can just get a Thunderbolt adapter and you're good. So to me, this feels like at least a 5-year monitor. I'm hoping to get 10 years or more maybe out of this monitor as well. So all of this leads me towards answering the question now of, who is this monitor for? Well, I think it's for creative professionals, no doubt, those people that just need a big canvas. So if you've got Figma over here and, I don't know, Final Cut over there, like, creative people just need a lot of space, like for video timelines and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty hard to beat just having a big screen. Is it for gamers? Maybe. I mean, I love playing Factorio on this thing. Having the big canvas for the factory is amazing, but there are better choices for pure, like, first-person shooter gaming and other, like, racing games and things like that. But I don't know. Then again, racing, you want a wide field of view, so maybe. I don't know. Gamers, productivity, yeah. I mean, if you just want the best of what's available right now for your home office, it's really, really hard to beat this monitor. So there we go. That's my review of the Dell U4025QW. I hope you found something useful today. And until next time, I've been Alex from KTZ Systems.